Good evening and welcome to Beyond the Lines podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Watson. On this cozy Saturday night, we're going to try and run some stuff for about an hour, we'll say. Thank you for joining me. And this is this show is sort of like what they told me math class was like cumulative. If you get behind in one thing, then the next part isn't going to make sense. It's slightly like that, where we build on the information that we talked about the episode before and before that. So if there are references that you do not recognize or understand, feel free to go through the search feature in Rumble or YouTube now. Thank you for having us, YouTube. We'll see. And, get some of the things we may have already discussed. But recently, what we've been talking about, yesterday I brought up the fact that I felt like I had to clear the air with the language module that I had been using to run a summary of the show. And I had realized that at the end of the recording yesterday that I don't think I actually made the point that I was trying to make. So I wanted to start off by clarifying that and then going into the topics that we have listed for tonight, which is listening to Congresswoman Kat, I think her name is Cammack. She explains the government shutdown. And then we can talk about the No Kings protest with Hag Inc. They did their show today. We can get into a little bit of that. There's so much going on and so many things that we can talk about. But while I am able to, and I have the energy to, and I can, let's just see what we can plow through. But like and subscribe, of course. So I wanted to clarify the issue that I was having with it, with the language module that I was running it through. They were like, oh, this claim is is this an unsubstantiated claim? Or like, I don't feel comfortable doing promotional material on this. And I was like, what was it about? And here in the transcript, it did not clarify, and I did not verbally clarify when I had actually hit play on Richardson's video on Facebook. So this is actually really interesting. So it had jumped without clarification. So the language module was interpreting the transcript as though it was the voice of the host the whole time and did not realize, because the concerns were that there were claims being made about the administration, about the Insurrection Act, and speculation. And so I had realized that, and I had clarified, like, hey, to clarify, between this point and this timestamp, that is not the voice of the host. That is the playing of another commentary that the host is doing commentary about. And that, I think, was the thing. And so it made me start to, again, question and clarify again why this is a phenomenon, and what we're seeing with just the polarization of conversations online and political conversations and such, is that there are a number of people that continue to spew the propaganda and the unsubstantiated claims, right? And my full criticism of Richardson is that she presents herself as a historian. Hold on a second. Give me 1 second. Okay. So it's that she presents herself as this expert, right? And this was the whole thing with the what we had all just experienced with 2020 and all that, is this, you know, where does, are people, do we have to, the authoritarianism actually that everybody just went through, right? So she presents herself as a historian, right? And then does not differentiate when she's doing political commentary. And maybe she does in a way that I'm not picking up on, that I don't understand, but it's like this historian. And then it started to get me thinking, like, well, gosh, if I ran her transcript of her Facebook lives through this language module, well, they sure would have a field day, wouldn't they? Because there would be a ton of unsubstantiated claims that were spoken as though they were fact. Because oftentimes with the things that she presents on Facebook is that it's this copy and paste from like Washington Post or Politico or stuff. And then that's like the copy and paste. But when she does her like verbal little shows and stuff, her live streams, there are no notes or sources or anything. So it's like strictly very editorialized. And we're going to get into a little bit of that tonight, just so that we can keep on it. You see, and it's like, I feel like recently I've just been covering this person a lot, because it's becoming just so obvious. And this is for the historical record, because I know that she's deleted things like very much in the past. She's very much deleted things in the past. And so this is just very much, again, for the historical records, and then so that we can really think about these ideas, and so that we can think about the way that information is presented, right? And so that we can understand when we are being propagandized to, on all sides. And it's okay also to have, choose what you want to believe in, or what you do believe is to be truth. And also understanding that a lot of things are propaganda, right? That's why we call it pro-Trump propaganda, right? That doesn't mean that it's not true. It just means that the marketing initiative is about putting Trump in this light that is, that what it is. It's not doing like, journalistic reporting in this sort of like, well, I'm just going to give you what happened and you can decide for yourself. And we said, and this, by the way, is not journalism, but also we said in yesterday's show that journalism is not objective. So everybody has a bias whenever they're giving information. And so, yes. And yesterday we were watching a video by at the Antifa roundtable that Trump did, where Savannah Hernandez was giving her impassioned speech. And, she is a journalist, and she's being demonized as, just some influencer, some podcaster. It's really interesting how these people, just this narrative too about Charlie Kirk. It's just, it's definitely strange at best. And I'm being polite about that. Like this podcaster, just really dismissing him entirely, which is sort of the common thread. But yeah, so anyway, it's to dismiss people by calling them like just a podcaster, or these right-wing podcasters, or these, Antifa isn't real. It's just made up by these right-wing podcasters. It's like, this girl's like on the street doing, she's reporting on what's happening, so you have to make the claim, since you made the claim that Antifa is not real. And then you think you're supporting the claim by then showing people dressed up in frog costumes as supporting your claim. You see, it's gotten so bad. Like we have no journalistic integrity. That's not, Trump, supporting the Trump administration and appreciative of the efforts that he's doing right now. We have no journalistic integrity. None. So this is all about building trust back up in institutions. So how do you think you're building trust back up institutions by having these historians out here just acting like they have their pulse on the, their finger on the pulse? And when they're just making shit up, pulling shit up out of their ass, like how is that building trust back up in institutions? So we're going to get into it. We're going to screen share a recording that Congresswoman, she's in Florida. She's a Congresswoman out of Florida. Here she is, Congresswoman Kat Cammack. Day 9 of the government shutdown. Here's what that means, why it shut down, and how it reopens. So she actually is feeding her baby in this video. And it is 18 minutes long, so we'll see how far we can get. But I think she actually explains it fairly well about what's going on.
Hey, everybody. Congresswoman Kat Cammack here, along with baby Augie. And time is precious. So definitely balancing motherhood and Congress. But I can do both because moms, we can multitask. But I wanted to jump on here because it is now officially day 9 of the government shutdown. And I wanted to give you guys a rundown on what's going on because it is pretty typical that you have bad information out there when it comes to anything government related. But this has been extraordinary in the bad information about what is and isn't going on. So I just wanted to give you guys a breakdown of what's happening with the government shutdown, what exactly that means for you in particular, and for the country, of course, how we got here, what a CR is, but most importantly, how we get out of this. So I'll just start with on September 19th, the House of Representatives, because don't forget, Congress is the House of Representatives, but also the Senate. So when we talk about Congress, we're talking both of the chambers. But the House of Representatives, we passed what is called a CR, a clean CR. Now, pretty much everyone in Washington knows what that means, but for everyone outside of Washington, what that means is a continuing resolution. So a continuing resolution is very simple. It is just a rubber stamp of the previous authorized spending. So no new programs, no additional funds. It stays completely flat. That is what a clean CR is. And so this CR has been voted on 4 times previously. Miss Paula says, "Oh, baby, yes, Miss Baby Augie is getting her bottle. Mom has been a pumping machine, we will say." So on September 19th, the House, we passed this clean CR along with some Democrats. They joined us in this. And what happens is that bill then got sent to the Senate, and then the Senate has taken it up and it has failed multiple times. So what that would do is that would keep government functioning as we know it. And then it was supposed to go to the president, of course, for signature. But funding for federal government ran out at the end of September. And so that is why, let me adjust here, that is why we now have a government shutdown. What happens during a government shutdown? Well, there's 2 titles that you should be familiar with, essential and non-essential. So in the case of the federal agencies, they have the authority to determine who is essential and who is non-essential. Now, coming from the private sector, everyone who ever worked with us was considered essential because, well, if you're non-essential, then what the heck are you doing, right? But every single agency has to report who of their employees, of their workforce is hello.
I want to like hold that baby. I'm like, let me be the baby.
In the case of, I'll just use the Department of Education as an example. They furloughed 88% of their workforce, which begs the question, why do you have so many non-essential employees? Discussion for another day, perhaps. But who is marked essential are people like our troops, our Border Patrol, ICE, our air traffic controllers, TSA, people involved with national security, right? Other things that are essential that make you go, are members of Congress. They are deemed essential, and many of them still keep their pay. what is interesting is that while the troops and Border Patrol and ICE are not getting paid, but being required to work, members of Congress still get paid. So first thing I want to highlight here is that I have requested, actually very early on, I requested that my paycheck be withheld, because if our troops aren't getting paid, I, as a member of Congress, should not be getting paid either. So that's my first thing. Make a note of this in your brain, because if you are not in our district in North Florida, in Florida's fighting third congressional district, I want you to reach out to your member of Congress and ask them to withhold their pay until the government reopens. That's the first thing. The second thing, yes, she's doing so good. The other thing that I wanted to flag is when we sent this over from the House to the Senate Democrats, despite having voted for this exact same bill 4 times previously, they have decided that they are going to hold the American government and its people hostage over a very interesting set of issues. One, in their counter proposal, and you don't have to take my word for it, you can look this up yourself. In the counter proposal, the Senate Democrats have asked for $200 billion in taxpayer money to go towards funding healthcare for non-citizens, illegals. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. You can pull up the counter proposal yourself. And on page 57, section 2141, you will find it there in black and white. I have heard from, I can't tell you how many people they say, oh my goodness, that is not what they're asking for. Actually, yes, it is, because it is in their counter proposal. Second thing I hear often is, well, Kat, illegals and non-citizens can't get healthcare because they don't have social security numbers. Okay, we'll set that aside, that they can't get social security numbers. I know a lot of folks that are able to get fake documents and papers, but that aside, what has happened is the states, particularly blue states, 14 of them to be exact, 14 states in the United States have decided that they are in fact going to provide healthcare for non-citizens. And so they take federal dollars and they move them around. And effectively what you have there is taxpayer funded healthcare for non-citizens on the backs of American taxpayers. So that argument, again, is hollow. That yes, there are in the past illegals who have gotten healthcare that was funded by the taxpayers. On July 4th of this year, we in the House of Representatives and the Senate, using reconciliation, we made it illegal. And
oh my gosh,
she's
God.
not drunk.
God.
And that is what the Democrats are trying to change.
Oh my gosh.
Thank y'all for being so patient and kind while I'm trying to multitask here. I know.
Oh my God.
So that is one of the demands that they have made. The second demand is, again, $1.5 trillion, and that is all encompassing of healthcare for illegals, but also the Obamacare subsidies. Now, this is interesting because those subsidies, they expire at the end of the year. So we have about 83 some odd days, but until those subsidies expire. And let us not forget that those subsidies don't go to the people. They go to insurance companies that just last year marked 237% profits, 237% profits. And they are asking for subsidies. Again, we don't have healthcare in this country. We have sick care. And there is a way to fix it. But throwing money at the problem does not make it go away. Nor does instituting a one-size-fits-all. We need to get back to a place of real preventative healthcare in this country. And we can do that. But it is not the way that they're going about it right now, holding the American people hostage, shutting the government down. That doesn't fix anything. In fact, it makes it worse. So those are the two demands that Democrats have made in the Senate, that is why they are holding the American people hostage. And to me, that's just unacceptable, totally disgusting. We have troops not being paid. We have ICE agents, Border Patrol, federal law enforcement, Coast Guard not being paid, air traffic controllers not being paid. women and children that are on WIC, which is the nutritional program for low-income individuals. That is a program that universally Republicans and Democrats all support. And to think that there are moms out there with young babies, same age as little Augie here, not being able to get formula, not being able to get the things that you need to survive, that is heartbreaking. And thanks to President Trump, just I think yesterday, he made the announcement that he was going to shuffle funding from tariff revenues, had to dig up an old 1930s statute in order to move funding from tariff revenue over to WIC in order to ensure that moms and babies could get food. That, to me, is incredible, speaks to his benevolence and really how remarkable this whole situation is, but actually highlights how absolutely disastrous the demands of the Senate Democrats have become. So yeah, it's just really, really frustrating. Certainly as a new mom, watching that program get used as a political pawn in all of this, it's disgusting. So that's really the backstory of what a CR is, how it works, what it does, and really what the demands of the Senate Democrats are right now. Now, the next thing, and I need to look at my notes here because Lord knows pregnancy brain is real. The other thing is...
Okay, so those were like the two main things that she said that I wanted to share. And I thought that was interesting that Trump was able to take the tariff surplus and be able to move it and direct it over there. So I'm going to include the link for her and you can watch the rest of the video on her Facebook page. So now we're going to go to, again, watching, and I know, and this is because Richardson puts out her things on Facebook. This is like she's definitely doing like a flood the zone, okay, which she would say. She's definitely doing that. So it really doesn't matter what she says. She's just sort of, I think, making, just showing up, I think is admirable. However, showing up to do what? So let's go to her. And this is really just to chronicle, right? So let's go to her, a clip from her recording that she did yesterday or the day before, because her comms person clips it on YouTube. Okay, here we go. So you can see it says Trump isn't in. This is, so I just want to be clear to the language module. This is Richardson's title of her video. It says Trump isn't in control of the administration. So how is it that I have unsubstantiated claims, but Richardson...
to answer anything that's going on. He throws questions to other people. If you hear him in interviews, he just sounds bonkers. He's not calling the shots. Two people at least are the ones running things. One is, or appear to be, one is Russell Vought at the Office of Management and Budget, and I'm not going to talk more about him today, I don't think. But the other is Stephen Miller, who is the White House Deputy Chief of Staff. White House advisor Miller is, according to The Guardian, the one who has ordered the strikes on the Venezuelan boats. A report out today says that he thinks this is a way to convince people that immigrants are terribly...
I'm sorry. So your claim is that The Guardian reported that Stephen Miller's the one that ordered the bombs on this Venezuela boats. This is just for the record. This is what I'm hearing you say, that it was Stephen Miller that did that. So where is the link to the source? So you're saying it was The Guardian. So I'll look that up as you are talking.
Dangerous at a time when, as I mentioned before, the Trump administration is deeply underwater on its attacks on immigrants, especially undocumented immigrants, because during the campaign, Trump said that he was only going to go after, the criminals, the rapists, the murderers. But what people didn't understand, and when I had an argument with somebody who was voting MAGA over this, what people didn't understand.
Somebody who was voting MAGA over this. Hold on. What did she just say? So like, when did you have this argument? Somebody that, we're just...
go after, the criminals, the rapists, the murderers. But what people didn't understand, and when I had an argument with somebody who was voting MAGA over this.
Who you had an argument with somebody that was voting MAGA. So was this before the election in November?
What people didn't understand is the Trump administration considered anybody who had entered the country illegally a dangerous criminal because
Richardson's claim is that the Trump administration had labeled anyone who entered the country illegally as a dangerous criminal. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Well, they are a criminal. Now, whether Richardson is adding the word dangerous or not, they are a criminal if they entered the country illegally. They did break the law when they entered the country illegally, just to clear that up. So I don't know who the MAGA person is that you're talking to. Is this a story that happened in the past or whatever? But just to clear that up, nobody's confused about what's going on. This is Agenda 47. Nobody's confused about what's going on. There's not some conspiracy or something that's happening where Trump is arresting non-criminals. Okay. So just to clarify that.
Because they had broken the law about not coming in without documentation. Now, that is not a felony, by the way, but they considered anybody who was undocumented a criminal. And that's what they did.
They considered anybody that was undocumented a criminal. Because there are legal ways to enter the country, right? Without being an American citizen, right? So, okay. So this is all about Richardson debunking her own claims in real time. Okay, on Stephen Miller, we're looking up whether, okay.
In the first term, and that's what they meant in the second term, but you had to read between the lines. Now you're seeing it played out, and people don't like it. They do not like losing their neighbor of 30 years. They do not like, watching mothers being torn away from their.
People don't like it. Again, another claim. I don't know what kind of show this is. Is this an editorial project? Is this just an opinion project? Is this a news source? I don't see any disclaimer here in the thing here, but we're assuming that this is sort of, these are all very big claims that people are very unhappy about it, because if actually you poll to see, actually, Trump's polling on immigration. Okay, I'll look that up while my computers. Let's keep going.
Their children. They do not like this. So you still see Trump and Kristi Noem and people like Miller talking about how immigrants are, criminals and terrible and so on. And yet support for immigration now, because of these attacks, is the highest it's been in years and years and years. People are like, wait a minute, we're a country of immigrants. And a little bit of a rabbit hole here. I just want to, well, never mind. Although it's killing me. I might come back to it. So he's apparently trying to convince people that these people in these boats are bringing in, as Trump said, enough drugs to kill. I think Trump said 30,000 people. Well, there's a real issue here in that the drugs that tend to kill people in the United States, the illicit drugs, because some of these drugs can be used in therapeutic ways as well, but the illicit drugs tend to be fentanyl, which comes from Mexico, from precursor chemicals that are made in China. And that's what the Biden administration worked to do, was to break that cycle so that China would crack down on the shipping of precursor chemicals. And the administration, that both the Mexican and the American administrations, were cracking down on the financing of what are essentially at this point factories building fentanyl in Mexico. But the people that the U.S. has been targeting have been from Venezuela, which does produce, I think it's cocaine. I'm sorry, I'm not really good on I'm better on where the interventions
Hold on. I just want to step. This is what she's doing here. So this is about media literacy as well. This is about reading a few different sources and trying to get, so polling, of course, we understand that polling can be obviously biased, but it just depends on, who's doing the poll and what the outcome is going to be. So it is interesting that if she's now she's not putting any sources, so I'm not giving her any sources. She's not sourcing anything, but she's turning this whole thing saying like people are not happy about what is going on. Now, we did explore that the optics back in, I think it was August, the optics are not always good with it looking like, with people, it looking like the federal government is militarizing the streets. And this is all related just to the immigration issue of going ahead and as Richardson was saying, going after people that are here illegally, but also involved in criminal activity. And so it's not good to see the optics of it, right, is not good. Interestingly enough, I think that they have shifted a little bit with trying to help the American public understand what it is that they're doing without it, being something that Richardson is explaining to be like, authoritarianism, right? Where it's like, have they crossed the line? Are they going over the line? Are they targeting people, for reasons that are not that they're criminals? Is it what, whatever, how does that look? And I think most people do generally agree that immigration is not bad for the country. And so I'm reading some of these arguments here, or some of these articles here, saying, like the Associated Press is saying President Donald, this was back in April, though. President Donald Trump's handling of immigration remains a point of strength as he takes wide-ranging actions to ramp up deportations and target people in the U.S. that are here illegally. And then the Gallup, and that this is maybe what she's saying, is that a surge in U.S. concern about immigration has abated. Americans have grown markedly more positive toward immigration over the past year, with the share wanting immigration reduced, dropping from 55% in 2024 to 30% today. And so it's interesting because she may take polling that people are unhappy about this and people know how important immigration is. But, it's a representative of the time, because the border is closed now, because enforcement has occurred, because President Trump is president now, because we do have Tom Homan, because we do have Border Patrol actually doing their jobs and enforcing the law. And right. And all the crime is down, all that stuff. So, so it would be natural that then the American people would be like, oh, wow, this is because if you actually tap into and you go back to 2024 of this time, it was like flooding of people and the stories of people, just the crime and things have happened. And if you actually know people that are on the ground that work in those areas and they work in the immigration law and they know judges and they know the courts and they know the people and they know the players and they know all the things, there's like serious concerns. They lost, how many children because they did not report them. We all watched the hearing. I think we even played it on the show. Of the Biden administration, they would put the children in the hands of people that came to, claim them or whatever as caregivers. And then they would call as a follow-up and then they would never hear from those people. So that's when they say they lost all those children. And the Trump administration has been able to then now find some of those children, a certain percentage, whatever it is. So yeah, it's October 2025, right? and Trump has been in office for how long, we're definitely in a better place than we were last year. So it is easier for people to say, like, yeah, immigration is important, but people were always saying immigration was important. They just don't want open borders and illegal immigration in mass numbers. They don't want all of the, y'all remember the eating the cats and the dogs videos, right? But I mean, it's all about using the services and flooding the market, right? I mean, and XF goes into this very, very well, talking about the labor market and how both the Democratic and the Republican Party use the border and immigration to both of their advantages, to really like never shut it and not open, like just to leave it in this place to where they were able to just flood it with people that they could get on the voter rolls, right? And that they could get on the system to pad the numbers of the census as well. So then they were getting more federal dollars. This is what Congresswoman Kat was speaking about, is that it gives them more federal dollars to play with, because then they're giving the health care to people that aren't American citizens, right? Aren't on the books. And so it gives them a chance to pad the financial numbers, but it also gives them a chance to pad the voter rolls. And then Republicans can also just use it as a benefit to say, like, to not make it so that they have to come in here legally. So then they have to work legally, because then when you're flooding the market with people that will work, this is trafficking. When you're flooding the market with people that will work for barely nothing and that are here illegally and that are given promises, that's predatory. So they're given promises and with fear of being deported, right? So they're being taken advantage of in that respect. And so they'll pay for less than what you would pay an American worker, right? So it actually screws with the labor market and it screws with the American worker and the living wage. And so this is how we go back into the conversation about how the Democrats contributed to this, while they said that they were being a voice for labor, while they've hijacked and taken over the unions. And they said they were going to be a voice for this when they were huge proponents of keeping the borders open and allowing all of these immigrants to just come in. Like, in no other country is that acceptable. So I would say that Richardson is probably true when most Americans say that, like, immigration, yes, is like, hello, we all come from immigrants. Like, I come from a family of immigrants. All four grandparents on my side are all from European countries. We have family that, my husband's grandfather and mother, came here legally. So, we all have experience with immigration, and yes, like, we are a melting pot, like, absolutely. But however, you can't just say that. You can't just say, like, yeah, most Americans say, like, the United States is like a melting pot, and like, yeah, we love immigration. We're a country of dreamers. Like, it has to be allowed for people. And then they'll make the case that, like, people are escaping persecution and people are escaping their own governments. And yes, there's obviously always reasons for that, but that's not what we had found. So for Richardson to use the point of Trump and the Trump administration going after people that are doing overt crimes, right? And they know where these people are, and like I said, and all that, to say, well, people don't like it. People don't like seeing their neighbor of 30 years being deported. Like, yeah, they don't like it, but they understand that, and it's not those, and again, and this goes back to the optics thing, is like, that's true. Like, I understand the issue. Like, somebody that's been here 30 years, like, what's the reason that they weren't able to get like citizenship at this point? Like, they've been here for 30 years. Why don't they have citizenship? Why don't they have citizenship just like everybody else that came here and has citizenship now? Like, I know a number of people that came here and they have citizenship now, like a number of people. So why are people here? They've been here for 30 years, but they don't have citizenship. I'm not saying that I agree with them, being, raided or traumatized or whatever. I obviously don't agree with that, but I'm asking, like, okay, like, what, and maybe those, okay, but these are like handfuls of situations. This is not happening on a mass scale. This is not happening in pockets all over the United States. This is not an issue. And I would ask Richardson to if she's making the claim that this is like a serious, huge, big issue that everybody needs to get on board about, then I would, the onus is on her to provide further claims of this happening in a way that is like, completely something that then our rights are next, right? Because that's the argument that they're making, is that like, oh, your rights are next. Like your rights are going to be taken away. Your rights are being taken away. And she's not even going into the freedom of speech issue on social media, right? So she'll say your rights are being taken away, but like she's not talking about people that are able to talk about the genocide in Gaza, criticisms of the genocide in Gaza. So she's not even talking about the issues that people have, like the legitimate issues that people have when it comes to censorship and people's freedom of speech and taken away. Although our freedom of speech is not protected on social media platforms in the way that, and the censorship industrial complex, which I actually posted today on my Telegram or Substack. But Matt Taibbi has a whole thing when he went over the Twitter files and exposed that back in 2022 or 2023, and did that whole expose. So I would recommend anybody to read that to get caught up on the censorship industrial complex and how Americans were being censored because the Jack Dorsey's Twitter was in direct communication with the Biden administration and Biden officials to take people off, which also actually resulted in them deplatforming the president of the United States. That was exposed when they actually pulled him off of Twitter when they did do that. So let's keep going.
Than where the actual drugs are grown. But in any case, they do produce drugs, but it's not fentanyl. They produce something else. And at least one alleged wife of one of the people who died said, my husband was a fisherman.
Alleged wife.
And of course, they're being struck way farther than they ever could have gotten across the water to the U.S.
Wait
in those
until the
small
story
boats.
comes out. Yeah.
So it doesn't add up. I mean, the administration has never said has never shown any evidence to lawmakers or to the public that they're actually hitting drug dealers. They're just showing these videos of these boats blowing up, and they are truly horrific videos. I would urge you not to watch things with all the trauma that we're already going through, not to watch the things that really you think will be a problem for you. I do try and watch them because I feel like I'm keeping a record and I need to see things, but they are profoundly disturbing. So if Miller's in charge of that, Miller also wants to get rid not only of undocumented immigrants, he wants to get rid of people of color altogether. And, he has this fantasy of this sweep of stopping immigrants, of turning America into some fantasy version of his past. We have always been a country of immigrants. And the country, by the way, dates from the Constitution. Although we certainly have a precursor to that. But we've always been a nation of immigrants. His family is a nation of immigrants.
I was like, where's this at? I thought it was on Facebook. It's not on Facebook. Okay. So here we go. So this claim that she's making, right? This claim. Hold on. I want to go back to this website that I found here that was from September 29th. It's October 10th. It says Stephen Miller directing U.S. strikes on Venezuelan drug boats, The Guardian. This is what she's talking about here. So I don't know if you can see that here. Okay. So The Guardian reports Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller has played a leading role in directing strikes on suspected Venezuelan drug boats, at times eclipsing Secretary of State Marco Rubio's role. Miller deputies reportedly controlled targeting details and timing for individual strikes. Legal basis. The White House cites Article 2 self-defense and Trump's foreign terrorist organization designation of Tren de Aragua. Critics question any link to Venezuela's state apparatus and warn of extrajudicial killing risks. So The Guardian reported that he's been directing. And so his role at times surpassed that of Secretary. But I don't know. Miller's deputy, Tony Salisbury, and others have controlled targeting information, sources told The Guardian. Sources told The Guardian. In the September 15th strike, the Pentagon selected a boat days ahead, but some senior officials were briefed only hours before, right? So this is unsourced. This is, so yes, so Miller has described Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro as the head of a drug cartel. He argued the regime functions as a narco-trafficking organization. However, the White House has said Trump directs the actions. So Richardson here is actually giving misinformation and unsourced claims, saying that White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller is giving directives. He's been directing the U.S. strikes on suspected Venezuelan drug boats. When the White House is saying, though, that Trump directs the actions. The entire administration is working together to execute the president's directive with clear success, a spokesperson told The Guardian. Why don't you who said that then? Officials have cited Trump's designation of the gang as a foreign terrorist. That label was also used earlier this year. Okay, so yes. So where is her source then? And she's making this claim. Now, not only is she making, so here's what she's doing here, which is actually very, very wrong. She's trying to set up Stephen Miller as this person who doesn't like people of color, which she says which is, it is there. She has it's completely unestablished, completely unsubstantiated claim that Stephen Miller, she's saying, which she just said it, and we'll play it again. So she wants to link him, this person who she's claiming that is directing, right, these strikes on the Venezuelan boats, when the White House has said explicitly that President Trump is the one directing it. She wants to link him to this conspiracy theory, this blue anon theory, that he wants to get rid of people of color, and she has actually no evidence to support that. So we'll show why. Here, and we'll actually go back to what she said, but this leads into this.
Of turning America into some fantasy version of his past. We have always been a country of immigrants, and the country, by the way, dates from the Constitution, although we certainly have a precursor to that. But
what? All right, let's go back here.
We've always been a nation of immigrants. And the country, by the way, dates from the Constitution, although we certainly have a precursor to that. But we've always been a nation of immigrants. His family is a nation of immigrants. I mean, his family is a family of immigrants. And when people talk about, it always gets me when somebody like Bill O'Reilly or Sean Hannity talks about this great past before those people arrived. Because in the 19th century, Irish Americans were literally not considered white, nor were Italian Americans. And so this idea of there was some pure white, I mean, whiteness really is a construct. I'm not going to go through that, but this idea that anyway, all right, that was the rabbit hole I wasn't going to get down.
Oh,
Anyway, Miller is really going after the purification of the country, in his words or in his ideology, into a white Christian nation, which it never has been, by the way. It just never has been.
so if you go to let's see here, because I was looking this up, and this is what you can do as well. You know, you can just look up, because what we're talking about, Stephen Miller, okay? Stephen Miller. So what we would do is we would go to your search bar and you would go to, this is crazy, this is where we are, because this is our demographic, I guess. Stephen Miller, did he say anything about white nationalism? Okay. So alleged, here we go. Okay. All right. So we're going to actually stop sharing this for a second. And we're actually going to do a little media literacy here. Okay. Because she's making some very big claims here. She's making some very big claims about Stephen Miller and what he said, she says, allegedly. Did she even say allegedly? I don't know. So let's just do our own searching. Okay. All right. Okay. Alleged Stephen Miller emails reference white nationalists. So she doesn't say, an anti-immigrant perspectives. Okay. The Southern Poverty Law Center. Oh, so the Southern Poverty Law Center actually is also a whole thing if you want to look that up, you know, and this is just about if you want to see different sides to the story. That's what this is about. This is about offering a different perspective so that we're broadening our horizons, because that's what we're doing with her. And that's what we're doing with other media that we don't necessarily agree with, right? Because we want to understand where people are at, and we want to understand who's directing narratives trickling down to people, right? So anyway, if you go to the Southern Poverty Law Center, has released emails, it says, are from Stephen Miller, a key figure shaping immigration policy for the Trump administration. The messages show Miller's support for white nationalist websites and ideologies. KPBS reporter Jean Grower, who is writing a book on Miller, joins Judy Woodruff to discuss how the emails help explain. Okay. The Poverty Law Center has made public excerpts of emails sent by White House senior advisor. And this is a media source that Richardson would support, I think. PBS, I'm assuming. All right, so what I found to be the most telling from reviewing some of the emails is that at one point, Stephen Miller recommends that they do a story about this book called Camp of the Saints. It's an incredibly racist book that depicts the end of the white world. That's how they put it. The quote, end of the white world as the result of an invasion of refugees. And it's filled with extremely degrading depictions of migrants. Okay. Right. So we can read this. So this is that you can read this to see, while these three emails show some of the white nationalism that's informing the formation of these policies. So they're making a bunch of claims that, you can't actually gain from him making a suggestion about something that he, right? Okay, Stephen Miller and the camp. So that's NPR. If you do an analysis of power on these different media outlets, you can understand where people are coming from, right? It's not, and you would say also too that you can't believe everything that you read online. Isn't that also what I think people say that listen to this content, you know, Richardson and such. Let's keep going. So this is the New York Times. So they're writing articles about how Stephen Miller can't make America white. LA is paying. Okay. Where did I see? So basically, without us doing the research right now, but I mean, if you go in and you actually see like what he's referencing, he's just referencing that does not equate with to claim that Miller is a white nationalist and that he wants to get rid of all people of color. Like, you can't just make that claim against this person from the information that we have about the emails with Miller, is what I'm bringing up, is that Richardson just rolls it off her tongue and she's making this claim about him and putting it in this light that that's what he's trying to do, and then trying to mix it with this, again, this ideological drive to that it's related, right? It's not right. It's not right to make these connections with these things. And you can make up your own mind, I suppose. There, of course, you can make up your own mind, but I guess we're just trying to call her out on those things. I thought I had an article here. Oh, here. This is where the article I have here. Okay. So, strong allegations, varied framing, and evidentiary limits. Recent coverage contains strong, repeated allegations that Stephen Miller's immigration policymaking and public rhetoric align with white nationalist ideas, buttressed by specific references to historical admiration and family condemnation, but the assembled materials here do not present direct proof of formal organizational ties or conspiratorial coordination. Readers should weigh the consistency of policy outcomes and rhetoric highlighted across sources against the absence of documentary evidence of formal membership. Parallel reporting focusing on institutional power or rebuttal narratives demonstrates how framing and editorial choice shape the public opinion, right? Okay, so the way that the things that we choose to share and frame things, which this is all she's doing, this is all Richardson is doing, is trying to frame it in this way that makes him look like the claims that she has against him when she has no evidence to support that, right? Okay, so let's keep going back to what she's saying here.
We had Muslims in one of the first non-indigenous people to set foot on what became the United States of America was a Black Muslim man named Estevanico, which someday I'll do a video on. But anyway, I'll stop. But
so
he has this fantasy of going back to what he thinks of this white world. But the problem with that is it involves getting rid of the Democrats who are protecting the idea of a multicultural democracy. So one of the things he is doing is he is trying to declare war on democratic cities, on cities where people of color vote, where women vote. And in order to do that, they've tried a number of different things. And one of the things that Stephen Miller is really pushing is the idea of Donald Trump invoking the Insurrection Act. The Insurrection Act is under Title 10 of the U.S. Code. The U.S. Code is our laws. They're available online if you ever.
The U.S. Code is available online. There are laws. Stephen Miller is not doing that. He's not encouraging President Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act. And y'all are already saying that there's no insurrection. You guys are saying that there's no insurrection in these areas because you're trying to make the claim that Antifa isn't real, which is bizarre. And then you're showing the people in Portland in frog costumes and other blown up costumes. So you're proving that there's no insurrection. Do you think then that Stephen Miller and the president do you think that they think there is one? If you don't think that there is one, and you're saying, look, this is fine, everything's fine. So she's just making these funny claims. She's trying to say like, Miller's trying to, wants to encourage the president to This is so nutty because you're trying to set up this story.
I want to look. They're pretty complicated, but they're not, they're divided up. So you can find this stuff pretty easily. And the Insurrection Act gives the president power to override the Posse Comitatus Act,
Oh, the Posse
which is from
Comitatus.
1878, and says that the government cannot use federal troops against U.S. citizens to enforce, normal law enforcement. You can override that with the Insurrection Act, which is actually sort of a boiled down series of laws from a long period of time. Miller desperately wants Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act because, as he says, that gives Trump any power he wants.
He's just talking about it, and it can be a soft power tool, right? It can be a soft power tool to say, like, well, he has the ability to do the Insurrection Act. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so, and I would think that Richardson would know this.
It gives him plenary power. I'm sure there's a question here about that.
No, nobody has questions about it, though.
What this is all about is that there is a German political theorist named Carl Schmitt. I've talked about him before, named Carl Schmitt, and he looked at liberal democracies and he wasn't keen on how liberal democracies worked. And he said that liberal democracies, and this reflects the Constitution under which the Weimar Republic worked, but he said, if you have an escape clause, essentially, that says you have and you can create an exception, that's where the power in that Constitution really resides. It's extra constitutional. You can go outside it. And I've talked a lot about how this administration is going outside the Constitution, because you can declare an emergency and then do whatever you want. And if you can do that, you can make everything an emergency and you can get rid of liberal democracy.
Trump doesn't have to do that because everything is already playing out, because the Democrats are losing and they've never been more unpopular, and Trump's doing everything that's on Agenda 47, and we're only 8 months in. He doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to have more power than he does. You see, he doesn't need to. He already has the popular support.
Well, Trump has announced, I believe it's 8 emergencies, declared 8 emergencies since he took power. A tariff emergency, an emergency at the border, and so on, to garner all this power. But if he invokes the Insurrection Act, according to Miller, he can do anything he wants. That's the plenary power. But somebody asked the other day, asked here, why did Miller do that the other day when he was talking to CNN and he said, well, as we know, under Title 10, if Trump invokes that, he has plenary power. And then Miller just stopped. But it wasn't a technical difficulty. Miller's eyes were still moving. It didn't go.
Okay, so she's also trying to say that that incident where he was stop talking, right? So she wants to make it about that. I think that this is this is like,
so that idea of getting Trump to agree to invoke the Insurrection Act is part of what's going on with these. They are clearly showing him videos of Portland.
That's not what's going on. But that's your story. I get what you're saying, but that's not what's happening.
And in 2020, when he talks about boarded up plywood windows, for example, that was actually the case on the main square.
Yeah, because
of
those
Portland.
people were never, because nobody was ever held accountable for that. That's why. You see what I'm saying? That's why part of this is happening. This has been a problem. If you watched the show yesterday, Savannah Hernandez was talking. I mean, they all talk about this. This is what the whole Antifa roundtable was about, is that this has been going on for years. Okay.
Certain places in 2020. It's not at all the case today. I mean, there's before the judge who just took on a case about the deployment of National Guard troops in Portland said, there were 20 people at the ICE facility, and they were, giving you the middle finger. That is not an insurrection. That's protest. There's just no reason to call out any kind of troops.
Yeah, nobody's saying it was an insurrection either. So, okay. So let's stop sharing this and let's go to just a little bit of, oh my gosh, an hour already. Look at that. Okay. 8:31. Okay. Let's go to this just a little bit. We'll play a little bit more of this. Oh, you know what? Actually, we don't, this, I think she actually has it on the, here, there you go. Okay, we'll watch some of this. I mean, there's so much content to catch up on for the historical record. Okay.
Oh, yes.
How was your
Sorry.
week?
My week was okay. My week was a teaching normal-ish week.
It turned cold here. It's been beautiful. And I was
Okay.
wetsuit. Anybody's worried I have a
Wetsuit.
Okay.
Actually, we do want to talk about something, but now that you say that, Joanne, there was an image that went across the internet. I think it was late last night or very early this morning, of Scott McFarlane, the person who reports on legal cases, and he's just got his head in his hands. And the caption was something like, "This is the 24-hour news cycle." And I have to say, it really hit home for me, because every freaking time you think, okay, phew, that's it. We're done for a while. I can, make dinner and go to bed. Something else drops. And you realize that there's a factory in that administration that is doing this deliberately to exhaust us. And that,
And
that
there's
just
no
makes
way
me
out.
mad. So
No,
I'm
it's
like,
totally
screw you, I'm going to manage it.
No, it's totally true. And no matter what you do, right? If you stay tuned in, then you're just going to keel over from exhaustion. If you walk away and come back, then you got to catch up with the string of things that happened during the 15 minutes when you walked away to make coffee. So yeah, it's yes. And it's infuriating and exhausting anyway. But the fact that there's some deliberateness to it is even more infuriating. Yes.
And it does make me feel like, and maybe this is an unintentional transition to what we're going to talk about, but it does make me feel like at some level, you just got to stop reacting to them and write our own story, because this is literally how people retain control over others, is keeping them so exhausted and so off balance that all they can do is defend themselves. Whereas if you I always think of it as taking a step forward and saying, okay, you go create your havoc over there. I'm going to make a better world. It just, not only does it move the ball forward, it helps you retain control of your mind.
I say it almost every week on my Friday morning webcast thing, is that in this climate, you need to stop and breathe when you're having a strong response to something. And to me, what that means is someone really trying to provoke me and get me to have a response that will be convenient for them right now? And that is so true so often, that taking that moment to stop and breathe and say, okay, wait a minute, what am I responding to? Is the goal here to get me? Am I being manipulated in some way with some version, not necessarily of propaganda, but like strategically dropped bombs of news so that I will have a certain reaction or not have a certain reaction? And the answer often is yes, which is part of why you and I are so, and I'm sure many, many other people, infuriated by it.
Well, and I do think it is propaganda. I mean, if you look at what the radical right is building with this idea of there being riots in Portland, and I do want to talk about the fraud.
And I also just want to say the radical right, just a phrase that she's using to label people to worry her audience. So she's actually just doing exactly what we're talking about. Richardson's talking here. Heather Cox Richardson and Joanne Freeman are talking here, and we're watching a clip of their show that they did on Saturday. It's called What the Heck Just Happened? Okay? So they're making the claim that this is the radical right. What does that even mean? So what does that mean, in fact?
Riots in Portland, and this idea that there is a concerted group of radical, what do they call them? Radical left. I mean, we'll go through all the list of terms. That's just not true. I mean, it's just absolutely fake. And I saw.
She knows what the term is. She doesn't want to say radical left. Huh? That's wild. She doesn't want to say the radical left. Why? You're very happy and comfortable talking about the radical right and the MAGA Republicans and the MAGA extremists and the far right and the radical right and blah, 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 blah.
saw somewhere on one of the legacy media channels today talking about how, well, both sides are advancing a different view. It's like, no, one side.
Get the stuff, bring it to me, and I'll
is actually trying to say this is what's happening. There is not a riot. There are not riots in Portland, Oregon, and in Chicago.
They're either rioting or not.
That's right.
You know, it's like there's no both sides. It's
Well, are they blocking the street or not? Really? Because I see them out like in the middle of the street. You know what I mean? Are they stopping people from being able to, you know, get to where they're going? Right?
so yes, no, it's there's still actually the fact that some people, some legacy media is still both sidesing this moment. It is kind of mind blowing, and that's a perfect example of that. It's like no, they aren't writing, and there aren't boards on the windows, and I don't know what the.
Yeah, but there were, and there was a direct relationship with Antifa then. That's what they're talking about. I'm sorry, did I miss the clip of the White House at the Antifa roundtable saying that this was currently going on right now? No, this is about addressing the situation that is and cleaning up what was.
Craziness, which maybe this should segue us into what we wanted to talk about this morning. What we wanted to talk about this morning has to do with a particularly focused stream of nonsensical accusations intended to have us respond in one way or another, fear, concern, whatever, that's come out because it's very clear that the administration and its folk are terrified at October 18th, No King's Day coming up.
They're not terrified, just to be clear. I did my research on this today because I'm like, nobody's terrified of this. But am I wrong? Am I missing out on some video of some politician saying something that would even could be interpreted as that? They're interpreting, Freeman and Richardson are interpreting it as though Trump is facilitating peace in the Middle East, which was actually, you know, that's pretty sweet timing for the No Kings protests, really, coming up here next week, and that y'all are promoting. And so no, nobody's worried about the No Kings protest. I don't know what y'all are going to be talking about during the protest, but you know, everybody's free to do that, and I get it. Yeah, but I just want to clarify that I did not see evidence of that. I looked on the White House website. I looked on the White House X feed. I looked on Mike Johnson's feed, some of the other GOP politicians, you know, to support the claim that anybody's afraid of the No Kings protest. No.
And to me, even though I realize there's nothing comical about this, it seemed to me, or it felt to me, maybe I walked away for 10 minutes and came back, but suddenly there was like this string of claims being thrown out, but like, well, you know, it's radical leftists. Oh no, it's Marxists. Oh no, it's actually Hamas. Oh no, Soros is paying them. And it was like within a 15-minute period, it was like throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? It was like, it's this, no, it's this. Oh, whatever it is, it's fake and it's bad. Oh.
So you guys have already had No Kings protests. There have already been a number of them. Nobody cares. So nobody cares. Nobody cared about those ones, and nobody cares about this one. And yeah, it doesn't feel good, huh? To be labeled. Does it, Joanne? Doesn't feel good to be labeled, where you just want to go out there and protest what you think is, a fascist dictatorship and rising authoritarianism, right? You're trying to convince your audience that Antifa is not real and that it just means anti-fascist, which just means you're against fascism. Who isn't against fascism? So, it doesn't feel very good, does it, to be misrepresented and to be labeled
already over and over and over and over again, which and I guess this is what we'll talk about, pisses me off because they're just trying to get us scared, to frighten us and get us to not go, because they are so scared at what's going to be.
Nobody cares about that. Nobody doesn't care if you go or not. Okay. Nobody cares. They're not trying to get people to not go. People are already not going to go. Okay. You don't have to try and convince anybody not to go. Okay. We already learned, like MAGA already learned about not being allowed to gather at all with January 6th and what they did, and with all the FBI agents that were infiltrated in January 6th. Okay. And so, Trump supporters aren't going to, they don't care about, liberals gathering together with their signs. It already, y'all meme yourself, so, this isn't trying to get people. This is about creating awareness for who runs these organizations, who does try and activate people to turn out. And I think it's just doing political narrative as well, and just political rhetoric, and just doing the whole, dog and pony show, just like you guys are. But I mean, just talking about it like it's so silly. And then you have Eric Swalwell, right, wearing like, this is my No King shirt. So if anybody wants to Google search Eric Swalwell, just look him up and just see, what do people think of Eric Swalwell? What has happened? Like, what does his sort of backstory look like? And what do people think about him? Right?
Happening that day. Simply the fact that there will be so many Americans peacefully marching with signs.
Americans, and probably people that aren't Americans. I'm sorry. I'm just saying, like, yeah, peaceful. No, I get it. It's fine. Sorry.
That they will not be able to say, oh, it's just a handful of Marxists or whatever.
No, nobody's going to say it's just a handful of Marxists. They're going to say exactly who it is. It's y'all. We'll see. Just it is what it is. Like, everybody knows the people that are going to turn up.
Or the new claim will be.
Yeah, it's an attempt to get people not to turn out. And it's really interesting because you can see since the shutdown, which has gone on now.
Heather, are you going to go to one of these protests? Like, you should film yourself on the street, and both of you guys should. You guys should film yourselves at these protests and show that you're there too.
I mean, at this point, House Speaker Mike Johnson has said that he's not going to call the House back in session for 4 freaking weeks so far. They've been throwing everything at the wall to try and blame the Democrats for the shutdown, even saying Democrats voted against opening the government again, which is not what happened. They voted not to permit the Republicans to push through a continuing resolution until they addressed those premium tax credits that were not extended in the Republicans' July bill, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which is going to send premiums skyrocketing. And 78% of Americans want those tax credits extended. So first, they're trying to throw this.
And we just saw with Congresswoman Kat saying that they're not going to. And maybe I stopped this before she said this, or maybe she did say it. They don't want to keep putting money into a broken system. I follow this other woman on Facebook. She is a surgeon, and she does breast cancer reconstruction, or women that have had breast cancer or breast reconstruction. And she is just doing some incredible whistleblower work. And she recorded herself on a phone call with the insurance company, like a peer-to-peer call. And she has just been chronicling her journey and just talking and educating people on how we need to do health insurance differently, and just has great advice for people, and is trying to figure out for herself, because she's had some repercussions, and she put that video out for her own private practice that she has, the surgery center that she has. And so this is, people just don't want all the stuff that has happened with Obamacare. People just don't want, yes, I understand people get tax credits and stuff, but people just don't want the government funding these broken systems where it needs to be cleaned up.
At the wall. Then they're trying to say, well, we're not going to pay people who are furloughed. Oh, we're going to fire people. I mean, they're trying to do everything. And then really, like you say, concertedly yesterday, House Speaker Mike Johnson, Majority Whip Tom Emmer, one from Louisiana, one from Minnesota, both came out and said, oh, this is an anti-American rally full of Marxists, pro-Hamas. I forget some of the other terms. And it's a really interesting thing because increasingly it looks like sheer desperation when you look at the fact you got 2 Republican governors now saying, hey, we don't think Trump should be sending the National Guard into other states. And you've got 78% of Americans saying, yeah, we want to have those tax credits extended, and blaming the Republicans for the shutdown. And it's just weird because you sort of feel, our big thing, I think, is we the people versus this small cabal. And they,
Bro. Is that what y'all think you're doing? We the people after this, against this small cabal?
continue to try and turn it into friends and enemies, and everybody else is the enemy. And, they're down to just, a bunker full of people.
Nobody's punching down. Okay. This is what I tried to explain before. It's not about it's not about them trying to punch down people that are just bystanders in this, thinking that they're coming out to protest, the Trump administration, because they've been misled. But y'all, I'm just saying, y'all should know better.
No, absolutely. And what struck me yesterday, it's, you and I say very often that the aggression right now has to do with the fact that they're weak and they know it. And I realize that that's a counterintuitive thing.
There's no aggression. I don't know what there's no aggression
to say. But what came out in the last day or so was actual desperation. Throwing all of those accusations about October 18th felt to me on like a visceral level, like just fear and desperation.
I think that was your fear and desperation that was coming out, because nobody feels that way. Okay. MAGA's already been put through the ringer, and they're still being threatened, and they're still being propagandized that they're going to be taken, set up and all that. So I think it's your own fear that you're feeling, right? Coming up, because this is just old. We've already had no King's protest. They've already had the protests. Okay. We already had the campaign of Donald Trump for 2 years, where MAGA was being called every single name in the book. So no, nobody's worried. Nobody feels sorry for anybody. Nobody, you shouldn't feel sorry. You shouldn't feel bad. You should just understand that it is what it is. And I'm sorry that it had to, that the dust had to settle this way. I'm sorry that your protest had to get hijacked. I'm sorry that it's called No Kings, when it clearly, you guys have already, thank you for that, debunked your own claims that Trump is a king. And we've done that in the previous shows. So I'm sorry that that's the label that you guys have to work with. That has to be embarrassing. That has to feel bad. So I'm sorry about that.
Because in the end, if millions of us show up all over the place with signs and just peacefully march, I'm sorry, but no one is wealthy enough to pay, all these people.
Yeah, no. Not everybody's paid, obviously. Not everybody's paid. Some people are paid. Provocateurs are also paid. Instigators are, not everybody's paid, of course. A lot of people aren't paid.
To somehow to claim that we're fake, to all of the claims.
I don't know if she's just hearing this story for the first time, if she's just learning about this for the first time, like the dynamic of these things. And it's really shocking to her. And that very well may be the case. I'm sitting here with an open heart, trying to just be genuine and vulnerable and be I'm on this journey with you guys. This is crazy. You cannot be, saying this stuff. This isn't true. I understand you made some good points here, but we're just trying to clean up the narratives and trying to understand the messaging that's being put through, what people actually really think, what is actually really going on, trying to have a holistic view of it. And yeah, there is so much that's going on. Everybody has an X account. All the politicians and everybody that has a platform has all of these different things that they want to say, and all the subcultures of the Blue Sky accounts that you guys follow and the Substack accounts that you guys follow. It's very overwhelming. So I understand that those of us that have this open heart, again, that are being vulnerable, that are trying to understand, that are going on this journey, trying to be independent thinkers, trying to look at all sides, but this isn't new. None of this is new. So I don't know why she's feeling this way.
That they're making will make no sense when a lot of people peacefully turn out. So
It will. It'll all still be the same. It'll all still be the same. When everybody shows up and everybody peacefully protests, it'll still be called the No Kings protest. And it will still not make sense. And everybody will have signs that they paint stuff on, and you'll have like Ukraine's flags, you'll have trans flags, you'll have probably Palestine flags. And yet, people can look and see about, the piece that Trump, I don't see that cause actually coming into these protests, and this is all above my pay grade. I'm just speculating at all. I have, this is not my realm at all. I'm completely a layman here. I'm just speculating, but this probably would have, the Israel-Palestine question, had it been before, would have been a little bit more part of it, but it's still unrelated to the No Kings theory. You see how the Palestine question did not really even fall into, you guys don't ever talk about it. You guys never talk about the Middle East. You guys never talk about Palestine and the genocide in Gaza. You guys never do. But you see how that doesn't even make sense with the No Kings concept. You see, so the whole concept is wrong, but you can't change it now. Remember the hands off, or the no hands, or something like that? That was, that you could have considered that too.
It in a new way to me, although intellectually I've been saying and thinking they're increasingly feeling desperate. To me, it was like in the air yesterday when they began. It was like they said, oh, it's a week to October 18th. Let's go. Let's start throwing out lies and craziness. And of course, the goal.
Well, because it also was related to the Antifa roundtable, right? So it's connected. It's not that they just all of a sudden picked a day. It's just that it was also connected to the stuff that's going on in Portland. And it's also connected to the Antifa question.
Is silence and compliance, right? Where people.
Well, and there's also, I spend a lot of time gaming out where I think the future of politics is going.
Oh, this is
I never write about it because it's just a guess on my part. But the Republicans have a real problem. They have these Epstein files. There was actually a Scott McFarlane.
The huge issue that Trump supporters had with Trump was the Israel and Palestine question, the war, the genocide. Okay, that was the big thing. You want to call it the Epstein files, and Epstein is related into that. But you also have to recognize that, that Charlie Kirk was publicly assassinated. Okay, and the work that Candace Owens is doing, and that whole story. Okay, the emails that he was, the text messages where he was on Gaza. Okay, you have to take that into consideration. So you want to say like this is so funny too, because like Richardson can't talk about these things. So what she'll do is she'll say, oh, MAGA's split on Epstein, right? So that, and she wants to, what did she say? She thinks she wants to have her, what did she say? The future. Oh my God, please, let's just watch it again real quick.
Compliance, right? Where people.
Well, and there's also, I spend a lot of time gaming out where I think the future of politics is going.
Right.
I never write about it because it's just a guess on my part. But the Republicans have a real problem. They have these Epstein files. There was actually a Scott McFarlane piece the other day saying that they have taken that his news organization took a look at the report on Jeffrey Epstein's death and found that in fact it was the crime scene had been really dramatically altered.
Oh, so all the Democrats now that were like, we don't care about Epstein. Epstein didn't kill. Do you understand? Richardson, you cannot be doing the Epstein didn't kill himself meme now. You can't be. It's already over, hun. It's over. And I know you're thinking about like the future of the politics. What are you talking about? This is the past. This is the past. Why are you saying it's the future? Seth MacFarlane, what are you talking about?
Yeah, and that got very little traction, I think, in part because we're all sort of.
It got very little traction. I wonder why.
Overwhelmed by information about the Epstein files, but that's not going away. This idea of not swearing in a Democratic representative from Arizona, Adelita Grijalva, because she will be the 218th vote on that discharge petition that will force a vote. Eric Swalwell saying, you know, a lot of Republicans are ready to jump ship at this.
Oh yes, I saw his Hex post that he said. Eric Swalwell, again, just Google him and this is what people think about him. It doesn't matter if you as the audience, it doesn't matter what we think of Eric Swalwell, because we can make our own judgment. It's what people know about him. Okay. And then he's posting on his, oh, Republicans are all turning on Trump. This is such the same old playbook that didn't work. They don't know what else to do. Oh, and she's repeating Eric Swalwell's X post as though it's like truth.
This point because of the Epstein files.
Right.
They got that out there.
No, it's not because of the Epstein files. People aren't pissed. They were pissed about the Epstein files, but then we've had some issues we've had a lot of things that have happened since then. Okay. And so, you know, you can release the files. Go ahead and release the Epstein files. Everybody's already seen Wright Dawson's work. Everybody already knows about them. Okay. We don't need anything to be like, you know, put out there or disclosed.
Also have the fact that there are furloughed people, including military members, who are not being paid during the shutdown. And again, they're trying to blame that on the Democrats. They're even putting that thing up at the airports at the TSA lines saying this is the Democrats' fault. But, you know, at some point, something's got to give. And, you know, one of the things that always jumps out to me is, and you and I talk about this a lot, is that many of our guardrails have not held because our elected representatives have not pushed the.
Okay, so I'm going to end it there because we've been doing this for an hour and a half and we could go on and on and on. And this has just been a little bit, I think I said we were going to go to about an hour. So this has been a little bit long, and I'm going to get back to our Saturday evening. I have a few more things that I have to do and some kid stuff as well. I guess it's getting a little bit late. It's about 9 o'clock here. So I hope everybody, if you're watching this on the replay, thank you so much for hanging out. We will catch back up maybe with this video, but always something going on. So thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you next time.